Hello, today I'm going to make a presentation of Macbeth, some different scenes in Macbeth and their relation to the Great Chain of Being during the Elizabethan era. Yes, and to start off, I'm going to make a little presentation of the Great Chain of Being. During the Elizabethan era, wherein our play Macbeth takes place, the key word of the society would be order. Everything from the smallest grain of sand to the most intelligent minds had a fixed and God-given place in the hierarchy. In the Elizabethan era, all sciences like anatomy, astronomy, hard science, they were obsessed with the notion of order and balance. Peace and harmony of the individual person and the society depended on their worst fear, which would be chaos. Here I've made an illustration of the different steps of the Great Chain of Being, where we have God at the top of the chain. Under him we have the angels, and beneath the angels we have humankind, which also includes different steps such as noblemen and like normal people. Under the humankind we have animals, also with different steps like the hunters and birds underneath. Then we have plants, and at the bottom we have matters, which would be dust and minerals. This great chain of being plays a very important role in the Shakespeare's play of Macbeth. In the play, Macbeth is destined to commit regicide on the King of Scotland and skips from death to become king himself. It is a very drastic disruption in the great chain of being, and therefore, when things are out of order during this time, it most likely will result in chaos, the biggest fear of the Elizabethan era. I would like to cover how the Elizabethan world is visible in the play. And to start off, we have Act 1, Scene 1, which includes three witches talking about when they shall meet again and the fate of Macbeth. In the first scene of the play, we are presented with three witches speaking of Macbeth. In the scene, we get a very clear understanding of these three women not being of the humankind. The first thing we notice is the fact that they finish each other's sentences as if they speak as one person. One moment. Yes, they say, that will be the era, the set of the sun, where the place upon the heath, there to meet with Macbeth I come, Grey Malkin. This is sentences said from three different persons, three different witches, but they finish each other's sentences. There's also a use of rhyme in their sentences, indicating that they do not speak as normal people. There are no other characters in the play that rhyme, which makes the witches seem mysterious and magical. They use both I rhyme and couplets. And here's an example. When shall we three meet again in thunder, lightning, or in rain? Here we have an I rhyme, which would be three and meet, and we also have the couplets, which is the last word of the sentence, which would be again and rain. Apart from this, we have an indication that the witches are all-knowing. When they are talking about when the three of them shall meet again, they say, one moment, when shall we three meet again, in thunder, lightning, or in rain? When the hurdy-burdy is done, when the battle is lost and won. So they know there's going to be a battle, and they know that Macbeth will be a part of it. And we know that from when they say, one moment, where the place upon the heath, there to meet with Macbeth. And a very important thing to notice in this first scene is when the witches say, fair is foul and foul is fair, when again talking about when they shall meet again. This would be a description of the nature around them, which would play a very important role later in the play. At Shakespeare's time, society was very Christian, and witches on stage would indicate disaster because they are a symbol of some sort of devils or heathen religion, and we know it's not going to end in a good way because it signifies something bad. A symbol of the order being turned around and the universal order being shifted. Another scene, which in Act 1, Scene 3, we have a scene with Banquo and Macbeth, our main character, talking about the three witches and also having an encounter with them. To continue with the scene where Banquo and Macbeth encounter with the witches, we can catch up upon the point I mentioned under Scene 1 with when fair is foul and foul is fair. There is a connection made between scene 1 and scene 3, because when Macbeth says his first line in the description of the nature around him, he says, "So foul a fair a day I have not seen." This is the exact description that the witches made when talking about Macbeth. Therefore, one can see that nature plays an important role in the scene, and this would be the first indication of disorder of nature. Another one would be when Macbeth is describing the nature around him after his encounter with the witches, and he says, "The earth hath bubble, as the water has, these are of them." This is what Macbeth says after the witches have exposed his destiny to him and bankroll and vanish into thin air. They have told him that he is going to become a king. The fact that the witches made the earth bubble and disappeared into thin air is another indicator of their magical powers, which make them appear unreal and therefore a part of the disruption of the great chain of being, since they do not fit in with their heathen religion. To move on, we have again in Act 1, Scene 5, Lady Macbeth's soliloquy. Lady Macbeth is the wife of Macbeth, and in Scene 5, Lady Macbeth has just received a letter from her husband Macbeth explaining the prediction of the witches, who told him that he was going to become a king. The important part of this scene is Lady Macbeth's soliloquy. Within this soliloquy, she manages to disrupt everything about the Elizabethan era and the great chain of being as possible. In one of the first lines, we hear Lady Macbeth calling some spirits who are not included in the great chain of being. One moment. She says, "Come, you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts, unsex me here." Already here we can see that she speaks to some heathen religion, which, like the witches in scene 1, disrupt the Christian era with God and angels in the top of the chain of being. When she says "unsex me here," she again makes up with the Elizabethan era. During the time there were very clear and strong gender roles, and when Lady Macbeth wishes to be free of her female role, she messes up the order. In the soliloquy, Lady Macbeth links different things to the two genders. For example, when she says, "And fill me from the crown to the toe, chock full of direst cruelty, make thick my blood, stop the access to and passage to remorse, that compunctions visitants of nature." She asks the spirits to stop the natural feeling of remorse found in the female body being within her heart. Also, when she says, "Fill me with the direst cruelty," she wishes to be filled with cruelty, which a woman does not hold fortime. This soliloquy is extremely important when talking about the great chain of being and the Elizabethan era in general in the play. Lady Macbeth and her husband are destined to commit regicide and take the place of the king and the queen. This skipping of steps will make chaos in the order. Something bad is very likely to happen. God had placed Macbeth and his wife in subdivision below the king and queen, and killing the king causes chaos. To sum up, we have a lot of disruption of order during these three scenes of Act 1. The first one with the witches who fall out of category of the great chain of being and therefore causes a break just by existing. They also predict the future for Macbeth and his wife, which causes one of the biggest disruption of order in the great chain of being, which would be regicide. In the scene with Macbeth and Banquo, the witches, we see a clear indication in the nature that something is up. Lastly, in the soliloquy of Macbeth, we see a woman basically breaking every rule within the Elizabethan world as she can, wishing to be unsexed, messing up the gender roles of the society, wanting to force her husband into committing regicide, and overall wanting to become queen and therefore causing chaos in the great chain of being.